Well, good morning, gentlemen. It's good to be with you this morning, be able to share with you. For some of you who may not know me, my name is Cam Broad. I am one of the counselors here at Doing Family Right. And yeah, so it's good to be here. I also like to thank each of the guys who have stepped up and shared a talk with the DFR family regroup this past number of weeks while Dr. Dave is away. A topic that's been on my mind that I felt would be important to address is the topic of making phone calls. As you all know, making a phone call each day in the recovery process is part of the five commandments. But more importantly, it's an important part of each person's recovery process. Yet, making phone calls is often the opposite of what those in addiction are comfortable doing. When I work with clients and I walk through how they're doing on the five commandments, I find that phone calls can be a real challenge for lots of them. In fact, phone calls can be one of the least implemented commandments of the five commandments. Now, some of you do phone calls well, and if that's you, hey, keep going. But for those of you for whom it is a struggle, I really want to encourage you today to reframe how you view phone calls so that you can have a greater impact on your own recovery and on your fellow brothers recovery or sisters for the women's groups. I get to hear from many people how they're doing in the five commandments. And yeah, sometimes there's really good things. Sometimes there's difficult comments that I've heard. And one of the most difficult ones that I've heard, or saddest ones that I've heard, is yeah, I make phone calls, but no one calls me. Ouch. How could that be? As everyone is expected to make a phone call each day. Yet there are those who get no or very few calls each week. I find that sad, and it's difficult for those who get very few, if any, phone calls. We're a regroup family, and we all need to be reaching out together, so no one feels like they're left behind. And as I thought about this topic, a story in the Bible came to mind for me. The setting is Jesus is about to observe the Passover meal, the Last Supper, with his disciples in the upper room. In a few hours, he would be betrayed by one of his own disciples. The trials, the flogging, the mockery, and the crucifixion process would take place, and he would die an excruciating criminal's death on the cross, even though he was completely innocent. It's in this context, right before all this that would be happening, that we pick up this story in John 13. And it says this in verse 1. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him, he came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? Jesus replied, You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand. No, said Peter, you shall never wash my feet. Jesus answered, Unless I wash you, you have no part with me. Then, Lord, Simon replied, Not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well. Jesus answered, Those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you. For he knew who was going to betray him. And that was why he said not everyone was clean. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I have done for you? He asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than those who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. And then a few verses down in verse 34 and 35, Jesus says, A new commandment I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. And by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Wow. What a powerful passage. Washing someone's feet was usually the job of a servant. That whenever someone came into a house, the servant would be at the door and would wash that person's feet. And it's amazing that on the night Jesus was going to be betrayed, when he may have had many, many anxious thoughts about going through his head, knowing what lay ahead of him in a few short hours, he might have wanted his own space. May have wanted time just to process. But in that place, he set aside his own comfort to humbly do a servant's job and love his disciples really well. It was an act of love, of putting his disciples ahead of himself, even the one who was to betray him, and humbly washed their feet. Amazing. And Jesus tells them, and he tells us in verse 14 and 15, as I have loved you, as I have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. As I have loved you, you now love one another. Further, you will be blessed if you do this. There's a blessing involved. And then he reminded them again in verse 34 and 35, as I have loved you, so you must love one another. Well, how did he love us? Sacrificially, putting our needs ahead of his, unconditionally. He even washed Judas's feet. Humbly, he didn't have to wash the disciples' feet. He did it because he loved his disciples and wanted them to love one another. Completely. He willingly gave up his life so that we could be forgiven of our sins, receive his saving life in this world and in the one to come in heaven someday. He did it because he loved us. Now, foot washing is not a common thing in our culture. It rarely, if ever, happens. We rarely ever see it. So what are some other ways that we can love Jesus, love others like Jesus loved us? And there are many ways that we can practically do that, practically love our brothers and sisters. But today I want us to consider that making a phone call to a brother in recovery, and for the ladies to a sister in recovery, can be a practical way to love one another like Jesus loved us. I want to encourage all of us that instead of looking at phone calls as something that's out of our comfort zone or something that isn't our favorite thing to do or something that I don't like to do, I want to encourage us to reframe our thinking about it, to think about it in a different way. What if we thought about making a daily phone call as a way to say, thank you, Jesus, for loving me. And as you have reached out to me and loved me, I'm going to make a phone call to encourage my brother. Or ladies, I'm going to make a phone call to encourage my sister. This is one practical way that I can encourage somebody else, care for them, build them up, stand with them, pray for them, and make their day better. I'm going to receive the love that you gave me, Jesus, so please fill me up as I reach out and encourage someone else. Instead of phone calls being something I have to do, look at them as an opportunity to love God. Because as we love one another, we are loving God, and we are loving others as he loved us. God made the first move with us. And I want us to think of phone calls as a way to love God, to love others, and give to others what God has given to us. Now, when it comes to making phone calls, I thought of going through the who, what, when, where, why, and how format to try and simplify it a bit and maybe give some practical steps or practical information, tools on how to make phone calls better. But before I do that, I reached out to a couple of people who are a long ways into the recovery and are having good success, as I wanted to get their perspective on this aspect of phone calls and how it has worked for them. One of them was Chris Boschman, who some of you may or may not know leads the Thursday night recovery group. And Chris has been all clear for a number of years, and he has made literally thousands of phone calls. Here are some questions I asked him and the answers that he gave. I said, Chris, what are the top 5 motivators for you when it comes to you making phone calls? In other words, what motivates you to make phone calls that are required each week? He said, not really a top 5. Here's just some of my reasons. Breaking out of isolation is crucial. Wow, that's big. Because when we're isolated, when we're on our own, that's where addiction can thrive. He said it can be as simple as committing to the decision or the discipline to making the calls. I'm making that decision. I'm committed to it. I'm going to do it. He said scheduling weekly calls with certain guys, hearing the nudge from the Holy Spirit about guys, and then responding to that nudge. He made this statement: it's you're never going to be get free if we don't do the uncomfortable things. One of the reasons for being in addiction is at times avoiding the uncomfortable things, doing the easy thing. And this is a powerful statement. You're never going to get free if we don't do the uncomfortable things. And he said calls are just as encouraging to the guy making them as they are for the guy receiving them. Another question: what are the top 5 things that you talk about when you do make a call? I said, I think sometimes guys don't have enough talking points at their disposal to implement in their phone calls. What has been really helpful for you? He replied, depending on how much time we have, it can start with some chit chat, like how are things, work, family, vacation plans, activities. Then moving to what you have been working on this week. What are some challenges you've gone through this week? Any victories to celebrate this week? How can I pray for you? And if the person reciprocates, he says, this is how you can pray for me. Thirdly, I said, you've been doing this for more than 5 years. What would be the best advice you would give to one of the guys who's struggling with making phone calls? Just do it. Simple. Just do it. Nobody likes it. Suck it up and make the phone calls. You will feel so good after you've done it. He said also be active in regroup discussion in the WhatsApp group chat. This gets you engaged. Guys get to know you better. Girls in your WhatsApp group, they get to know you better, and calls become easier when you're more familiar with one another. I asked him, how impactful have phone calls been for you in your recovery process of over 2,000 days all clear? He said, this journey is all about connection. Yes, we were created to live in community. And if you can't meet one-to-one, phone calls are the next best thing. Messages are good too, but you don't get the emotion and undivided attention that you can from a phone call. Last question, I said, anything else from your perspective that would be helpful when it comes to motivating the guys to do their phone calls? He reminded me of a therapist who, in dealing with someone who struggles to make phone calls, actually would get them to make some there right there in his office. He would say, hey, here's 5 minutes. Take your list of people you can call. Make as many phone calls as you can in 5 minutes. He'd walk out, give the person the opportunity to do that, and then that person would do that in the call. And it's, if you can get that person to get over that hurdle in recovery, it's going to really help them. And then he said, guys need to ask themselves, how have I been doing in recovery? If they're having good success, chances are they've been pretty consistent with phone calls, community, connection, etc. And then so that was some of my conversation, helpful information from Chris. I also called one other person who was over 700 days all clear, whom I'd heard had made an astounding 24 calls in 1 week. I thought, I got to call this guy up and find out how he did that. What had happened was he had accepted a challenge from a fellow group member to see who could make the most calls that week. They challenge each other. I'm going to make more phone calls than you. No, I'm going to make more than you. Well, he ended up making 24, and the other guy made at least 18. He didn't get 24. And I realized that was a one-off, but he made this statement. He said, the more phone calls I made, the more calls the other guys made. And one of the things he would say on the call was, hey, did you make a phone call today? He would really encourage and challenge others to make phone calls when he made his call. He shared that on certain days, like every Thursday, he would call one guy. And on other certain days, he'd call another guy. He committed to calling certain guys on certain days, and that was helpful for him. He also added that from his perspective, 10 texts is not as good as one phone call. And I said, what's your secret to being able to make so many calls? And he says, I just think about different guys and different prayer requests. I write down all the prayer requests in regroup and who made the prayer request. And then I call those guys and say, hey, you made this prayer request. How's that going? Thought that was brilliant. And then he had regular guys he committed to. And he said this too. He says, if you don't make any phone calls, it's really easy not to make any phone calls. But right after that, I asked, what's your best advice to give guys who are struggling to make phone calls? And he says, you just got to do it. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. The more you do it. the easier it gets. And he says sometimes if I've called guys out on it, like, and he's been in regroup, and guys have said I've got zero phone calls, or and he says, okay, well, why haven't you made any calls? Like, it's part of the process. Why haven't you called? That's really good. I think it's an important thing for us to do that. Is to if one person isn't going through the recovery process and not taking the steps, it's good for us to be able to, not in a judgmental way, but to say, hey, what's happening? Is there a thing I can pray for you in that? How can we help you with that? Helping each other in the recovery process. He said he found a big part of his success was that you have to do the whole process, all the parts of the process. He found that you have to do all of it. And he said you can't just do the parts that are the easy parts. It's important to do all of them. Um, and so those are some things that he said. So it's great to hear from some people who are having success in the recovery process, and what's helping them get that success, and especially in regards to phone calls. So appreciated that. Hope that's an encouragement for both of you. So then I have here the who, what, when, where, why, and how of phone calls. Now, this is not an exhaustive list by any means, and I would encourage you to add your own thoughts to it as you go along in your recovery journey. Maybe even as you are in your breakout groups afterwards today. What are some other things that you have done that have been helpful that you could share with other people? But here's some of the things that I've put down. So normally the why part is later in the sequence of who, what, when, where, why, and how. But I'm going to start with it first because I think it's important to know why we're doing this. So why do I need to make phone calls? Well, one of the greatest reasons to make phone calls is that, as you've probably heard before, the opposite of addiction is connection. The opposite of addiction is connection. It means that if you're in recovery, you need to be connecting with others in recovery. Addiction thrives in solitude, in isolation, in being alone, in not being connected. So if you want to get out of addiction, you need connection. You need to be intentional about getting out of that solitary thinking, of doing this on my own, of not wanting to bother anyone, of not needing anyone, and pick up the phone and make the call. The other phrase we use a lot is that recovery is a team sport. It's not a me sport. It's not a me situation. It's a we situation. There's teamwork involved, which means I must rely on other people, and they must rely on me. And way more can be accomplished through a team all working together than one person working alone. We need each other, and being connected is vitally important to your recovery process. I want to encourage you to reframe how you think about phone calls, to have a different perspective of phone calls when you approach it, to think of it as a way of loving your family well. No, not directly your biological family, but your recovery family, the other guys in your group, the other ladies, the other girls in your group. Phone calls are not just about making a phone call. They're also about helping those in your recovery family succeed in their recovery. Yes, it's nice to get a phone call, but it can be even more rewarding to make a phone call. And when you make the phone call, encouraging someone else in their recovery, it strengthens you in your recovery as you reaffirm the principles needed to recover for you well. Making a phone call is one of the best ways to deal with temptation. When you're in a tempting situation, feeling tempted, knowing that you might be walking into a situation where you might be tempted, pick up the phone and make a call. Bring someone else into the equation. Ask them to pray for you. Share what's going on. Ask them to check back in with you. Call for help and backup. Don't battle alone. That's what we're here for, to walk with each other and strengthen each other and pray for each other, especially when we're tempted. Make that phone call. But here's the kicker. If you're not making regular daily phone calls when you're doing well, you'll have a much harder time making that call for backup when you're not doing well. But if you are making regular calls, it'll be much easier to make the call when you're tempted or struggling. Yeah, phone calls aren't the only way, but they are a great way to love God and a practical way to follow Jesus' command to love one another as he has loved us. It's a powerful way to impact others and receive a positive benefit ourselves. Then who needs to make phone calls? Everyone. Everyone in recovery. Yep, that means you. It also means everyone in your group. Each one in the group needs to be making a 3 to 5 minute call every day. In order for you and them to recover well, this is an important aspect in your recovery and each of the guys or girls in your recovery group. Call the ones in your recovery group. Today, when you go to your group, in your breakout groups, even in your main group, if you don't have the phone numbers of the ones in your group, get them. Offer yours freely to others. Get those phone numbers. Call your wing man or ladies wing woman. They're there to walk alongside you in this. And no one should be surprised about receiving a phone call from another group member. It's we can expect that. And so that can make that easier as well. Then the what? What do I say? Well, here's a number of different things. How are you doing today? How have things been going for the last few days for you? What does your day look like today? What are you looking forward to today? Or is there anything that you're concerned or anxious about today? What can I pray for you today? Here's what's going on in my day. Could be here's a verse or a truth that God's encouraged me with. I want to share it with you. Like Chris said, depending on how much time you have, how are things at work, family, vacation, plans, activities? What have you been working on this week? What are some challenges you've gone through this week? Any victories to celebrate this week? How can I pray for you? And if the person reciprocates, this is how you can pray for me. Just some ideas of what are the things that I can talk about when I'm calling someone. When should I do this? Well, anytime. Yeah, obviously there's times that work better than others, but do it when it works well in your schedule. Figure out in your schedule what times work best. What would be a time that would work well for you to make the phone calls? Could be on your way to or from work or school. I tell guys, if you're on your way to work or you're on your way to school, and hey, just on my way to work, I've got a few minutes, but I just wanted to check in, see how you're doing. To do it that way. Kill two birds with one stone. On your way to somewhere, make the call. You could do it before a daily event, such as breakfast or lunch or on a break. Before going in the house at the end of the day. Could be after supper. It's like, I'm going to make my call before that event. You just set that up, and then don't go forward with that other event until you've made that phone call. And if you make a call and it goes to voicemail, leave a voicemail. That's your call. I want to encourage you to not say, oh, I can't because I don't want to bother them, or they're at work, or I can't because of the time change. Yeah, you can try to call at more ideal times, but you can always leave a voicemail. If they can't pick up, goes to voicemail, leave the voicemail. You made your call. You've encouraged them. So I really want to encourage that. Where do I call from? Could be anywhere. Um, could be a private room in your house while you're out on a walk, from your vehicle, at a park, maybe your office at work, preferably on a break so you're not, doing this on work time. But wherever you can find a place where the conversation will be private. There's lots of options. And then lastly, how do I make calls consistently? Well, again, I want to encourage you to start by reframing the call as a way to love others like Jesus loved you, as Jesus selflessly reached out and served other people. It's an opportunity for us to do that as well. Ask Jesus to fill you with his love, receive his love, and ask him to empower you to love your brother or sister by calling them. Just do it. Like Chris said, nobody likes it. Suck it up, make the phone calls, and you'll feel so good after you've done it. Or challenge another group member. Hey, you know what? Maybe it's not seeing the most that we can do each week, but maybe there's someone else that say, hey, you know what? I'm going to challenge you to make sure you have 7 calls this week. And if you want to make it fun and creative, if one of us doesn't make 7, the other one a coffee. I don't know. Like there's different ways, but you can encourage each other with it. You can challenge each other with it. simply commit to the decision or the discipline to make calls. I'm just committed to it. I'm going to be disciplined. I'm just committed to making that decision and making them. Take prayer requests down and regroup. Follow up in the next week with a phone call to the guys with their prayer requests from that week to see how that is going. Be active in regroup discussion. The WhatsApp group chat. This gets you engaged. Others get to know you better, and calls become easier when you're familiar with one another. It takes intentionality, it takes courage, it takes a willingness to step outside of one's comfort zone in order to do the necessary work to recover well. Don't make excuses. As you've heard before, we've talked about it many times. Boys make excuses and make changes. Or in this context, men make phone calls. It's just part of the recovery process if you want to recover well. I want to encourage each of us to reframe how we think about phone calls. If we see them as something that we don't feel like doing and are, it's not my favorite thing to do, we're going to be less motivated to do them. And we and others are going to miss out. But if you can reframe how you see phone calls, to see them as a practical opportunity to receive God's love, and then to give that love away by loving others as He loved you. If you can see it as a way of helping other people grow and succeed in their recovery journey. If you can see it as a connection with them is vitally important to not only my recovery journey, your own recovery journey, but their recovery journey as well. If you can do this and see it this way and work through it this way, you'll make phone calls more easily. And you'll be having a real positive impact, not only on those around you, but on yourself and on your recovery as well. So Jesus, as you've loved us, may we love each other in many ways, including this practical aspect of connecting with one another in reaching out with phone calls each day and each week. Gentlemen and ladies, blessing on you all as you love one another well in this way.